If you're tired of hearing about the same old horror books that top everybody's lists from this year, then have no fear, you're in for a treat, because I have some hidden gem and underrated horror books that I've read this year that I want to tell you guys about. Not only are these books underrated, but they're also overlooked and not often talked about. Every single book that I will be mentioning on this top 10 list will have under 400 Goodreads ratings, and lots of them have under 200. So stay right where you are. Let's dive into some chilling, unique, and criminally underrated horror books. Welcome, fellow freaks, geeks, and nostalgic peeps, to my channel, Simon Slashers, where, yeah, we talk about everything, like horror books, and sometimes beyond. But today's video, it is a book-themed video, and I'm excited to tell you guys about some books that deserve a little bit more love. So, without further ado, let's get into the list, and this is in no particular order, just 10 books that have pretty few ratings on Goodreads that I think you should check out because I really enjoyed them, and I think more people should be reading them. This is just a general list of books that I really enjoyed that have fairly few ratings on Goodreads, but books that I still think that more people should check out. Alright, I don't own all of these books, but the first couple I do, and lots of these are novellas, so a lot of these are quick and easy reads, which is always a good thing. The first one, it is a novella. It is Kill the Babysitter by Stephanie Sparks. This was such a unique take on a possession type of story. I wasn't expecting it. We do follow this babysitter who's babysitting 2 kids, and things go awry during this babysitting session. I don't really want to give away too much because it is rather short, but I think Stephanie Sparks is a very unique voice in horror, and more people should be checking out her work. This book only has 21 ratings on Goodreads, which is criminal. Really, more people should check this out, especially if you like unique possession type of stories. Special shout out to my friends Kelly from Kelly Hooked on Books, my friend Amber, and my friend Elizabeth from the channel Elizabeth Sagewood, who have shouted out Stephanie Sparks in the past, and that is how I stumbled upon her and her work, and I'm so glad that I did. Next on the list is another novella, but this one is an extra strange, weird, unusual read. This is The Despicable Fantasies of Quinton Serganov. This is a dual timeline story going between 1995 and 2002, and back in the 90s, this character, Quinton, he was not a dinosaur, he was a professional wrestler. So part of the intrigue of the story is wondering how he became said dinosaur. Also, it's filled with nostalgia. There's tons of wrestling talk too. If you're a wrestling fan, you might enjoy it, but even outside of that, just the nostalgia in general is really, really well done, really fun. There's lots of comedy in this as well, but also a lot of heart. So I really don't want to explain too much about it because I think it's a book that just needs to be experienced. I do highly recommend it. It was a 5-star read for me. Very, very quirky, but I had a blast with it. And this one only has 40 ratings on Goodreads as of now. Next up, The Maw, and this is another short novella length type of book, and I was given an ARC copy of this from the author, so thank you so much. This read would be perfect for an event like the Week of Weird Readathon hosted by Crystal over at Firebar Artsy and Jason over at Jason's Weird Reads. It is such a weird book. It's about a mouth that appears out of nowhere in a wall where these kids are hanging out. It's basically like this abandoned area, kids, you know, teenagers, whatever, hooligans, hanging out, and all of a sudden, there's this mouth, and more evolves from there, but it's perfect if you like weird reads, and reads that make you think. Because this one was really, really a surprise for me, and it only has, as of now, 24 ratings on Goodreads, so definitely underrated. The next entry on our list is available through KU, so extra easy to get a hold of, and that is Bad Movie Night by Patrick Lacey. I really enjoyed this one, and it's not my first book that I've read from Patrick Lacey. He's definitely an author you should check out because he's got lots of nostalgic vibes in his books, including in this one. So this one we do follow modern people. They have a YouTube channel where they watch and review old school horror movies, and mostly B movies. So, like, you know, movies that you can laugh at. I love those type of movies. But they come upon one that may be cursed. Dun dun dun. So they watch it and bad things ensue. And also a mystery evolves. So I don't want to say too much. Again, these are all, so far, very short reads. So if I say too much, it could give things away. This one's only 120 pages, and it only has 56 ratings as of right now on Goodreads. So I definitely recommend this one. I gave it 4.5 stars. Highly enjoyable. I read it actually for my old school readathon, watchathon event called Old School April back in April of this year, and it fit perfectly with the vibes I was going for, which of course is 80s, 90s nostalgic vibes, and this definitely had that, and it had like a very eerie vibe, which I very much enjoyed. Next up, this has the same vibes as Bad Movie Night in a way, but it's different, it's unique, and it's definitely worth picking up. And this is Joey Leonard's last horror movie marathon. So again, we've got the theme of VHS tapes, movies, within this little novella, just like in Bad Movie Night. This one is a boatload of fun. We are following Joey, our main character, and he works at the last video rental store in his town. Unfortunately though, that store is closing because the owner died, and the owner did will some of the tapes to Joey. However, hidden within the box of tapes he was willed is this strange unlabeled VHS tape, and it's not your usual found footage type of horror film, which is what Joey assumes it is at first. However, strange things starts to happen after he watches the movie, and if you like horror movie references in your horror books, I think you could really, really dig this, because there are references to one of my favorite horror movies, Phantasm 2, in this book, and it does have humor, because if you know Phantasm 2, the movie, that does have humor too. So this has humor as well. However, there is a darkness and a bleakness that is underneath the surface running throughout the story, so just be prepared. I think this one's great, and I cannot wait to read more by Kevin Lucia. Sabbath of the Fox Devils. This is probably one of the most unique books that I've ever read in my entire life. Probably along with the Despicable Fantasies of Quinton Serganov, but this one is also strange like that one. So this one also has a nostalgic flair, and in fact, it's even described as like Goosebumps meets splatterpunk, which is crazy, but if you read it, you will understand why it's described that way. However, I do want to say that this is really dark and deep, and also it has some religious undertones. So if you don't like religion in your horror, you might not like this, but I very much do find that interesting, so I loved it. And this one does bring the gore, but it definitely has a deeper meaning at the core of the story, and we're following basically our 12-year-old main character, Joe, and he's determined to live a normal life. He wants to have fun. His parents are very religious, so he doesn't get to do that very often. So he gets some ideas, some crazy ideas, from watching Saturday morning cartoons. And so he tries to bring some of the ideas that comes to his mind while watching the cartoons to life by searching for a powerful, maybe dark book. And stuff evolves from there. So it is really crazy. It is really out there, but I think this is so good. I wish more people would check it out, and I am so glad that I randomly discovered this. I think I was searching on Storygraph for book recommendations. There are these features where you can get Storygraph to recommend books you might like based on other books you've liked, and it recommended me this one, and congratulations, Storygraph! You picked really, really, really wisely, because this was a hit. You knocked it out of the park, and I would have never, ever heard of this book otherwise, because I've heard nobody talk about this book on Booktube. So that is why I want to talk about it today, and make sure that you guys know that it exists, because it is so well written and really, really different. And this one only has 117 ratings on Goodreads. And it is another quick novella length book, which is awesome. Next up on the list is a longer book. So we've been talking about a lot of novellas, but this one comes in at about 400 pages, and that is Montague's Carnival of Delights and Terror by Jamie Stewart. And this one is available on KU as of right now, and it only has 52 ratings on Goodreads. I think this is a delightful book. I hardly ever read a book physical only lately, unfortunately. I wish I did it more often, but I find it a little bit harder and harder to do nowadays, because audiobooks are so handy and helpful for multitasking. But when it came to this book, it was really easy to read, and that already says something to me. Like when I'm reading a book physically and it just feels like it's flying by and that I want to keep picking it up, then right away that book sticks out in my mind and I want to shout about it, because it just doesn't happen very often lately with physical reading for me. And this one, I've never heard of Jamie Stewart, so it was great to come across this. I was just browsing carnival-themed books, and this one came up. It is set during the 80s, so it's another book that has nostalgic type of vibes, even though it was published more recently in 2022. It is following our main character, Joe, who is traveling, basically hitchhiking, across the country from his hometown, and he stumbles upon a small town and a traveling circus. However, things start to go down at the carnival, and in this small town, people are disappearing and there's trouble. So not only are the town mad about Joe, who is an outsider, they're also mad about the carnival goers because they're outsiders. And it follows a lot of people in this small town, so it reminds me a little bit of Needful Things in a way, but it also reminds me of books like Something Wicked This Way Comes. However, this one has a little bit of a twist to it, and I can't tell you what that is, but the type of horror it is and the way it examines that horror is very unique. So I loved it, and I hope that you guys will give it a chance, because it doesn't have the greatest cover. I think a lot of people probably just pass on it because, whatever. It just seems like just another KU read. But this one was really good, and it stood out among the many KU random books that are out there, in my opinion. I'm so excited to talk about this one. Alright, so this is going to be the most recently published book on this entire list. This is a 2024 release, so a release brand new, just this year, only a few months ago. And this is Mother Dear by Ivy Tholen. And if you guys are longtime viewers of mine, you're probably sick of me talking about Ivy Tholen, because I have talked about her other book, Tastes Like Candy. However, I will never stop, because she's amazing and she deserves more praise and more readers, because there are so few authors, in my opinion, today who can write books that feel like you're watching a movie but in book form. And Ivy Tholen is one of those authors. She is a horror movie fan, and I think when you read her books, you can really, really see that just from the way she writes, because she's got a great grasp of fast-paced horror, but nothing is sacrificed, because one of the things you can do in book form with horror is really get some deep and complex character development. And in Tastes Like Candy, and in this book, Mother Dear, I feel like the characters are what makes these books different from your typical slasher fare, because you come to care about the characters in both Tastes Like Candy and in Mother Dear. Mother Dear, we are following actually killers, though, which I love. So we've got this main character and her mother and her sister, who's coming back to town after being gone for many, many years. So her sister is getting married, and the mother has to throw the wedding of the century. With the wedding comes a lot of stress and maybe extra bouts of murder. I don't know. This was so fantastic. It opens really quickly, very fast paced, but then we kind of go back into a more character development setting up point for a chunk of the novel, but then we get back into killing every now and then too. So I think the pacing is wonderful in this one, and I think if somebody were to ask me what book they should start with when they're thinking of picking up an Ivy Tholen book, I would actually say this book even more than Tastes Like Candy, because this book starts quicker. This book has more appeal in that I think it's got more mature characters, even though the characters are zany and unique and aren't your typical type of main characters, because, you know, they do commit murder, some of them, but, you know, even with all of that, it's just got great pacing and wonderful kills, and it's just wonderful all around. I can't say enough good things. This blew me away, 5 stars, and spoiler to my top books of the year, this will wind up on my top books of the year, and it's just fantastic. And it's criminal, because as of now, it only has 58 ratings on Goodreads, and yes, my rating is one of them, so more people need to read this, and more people need to rate this, so that more people can discover this. It is truly a great slasher book, and we need more of these out there, because, you know, slasher books, sometimes they're pretty bad. But this one, it is a little hidden gem among the sea of slasher books. And this book is also available on Kindle Unlimited, so there is no excuse. It's so easy to get your hands on it. And if you do like the idea of owning a physical copy, I mean, look at this cover. There's so many good things you can say about this book. Next on my list, a book I've talked about a lot recently because I just read it back in October of this year, and that is Carrick Glenn. This is so good. If you like coming of age, and if you like folk horror, you have got to pick this up because it perfectly combines those two elements to be one perfect novel. And you may have guessed by the amount of emphatic praise that this book may also be on my top favorite books of the year, and you would be right if you did guess that. So that's another spoiler. List is coming soon, very, very soon, but this one deserves more love. It only has 327 ratings on Goodreads, so this is one of the ones that has a few more. However, at least on my corner of Booktube, I haven't heard too many people talk about this book. Big special shout out to Leslie, who was one of my viewers who told me about this book and made sure that I made it a priority for my Halloween reads in October. She is awesome because I might not have prioritized it had she not said something, so I'm so glad she did. The main character, you really come to love him and his group of friends, even though sometimes they pull some silly antics. He really loves Halloween, and that's one of the most heartwarming and endearing parts about the book are some of these quotes about Halloween that are said by the main character, and when he explains why he feels the way he does about Halloween. I truly think this is one of the most perfect books to read for Halloween time or autumn time, especially if you're someone who loves that time of year and who loves spooky season. You cannot go wrong with this book just because of the imagery of the season, and also the horror is really well done. The characters are well developed, so you're invested. It has everything you could want for a specific October read, because not a lot of standalone books have Halloween vibes and Halloween settings and pulls it off really well, but this one does. Last but not least, our oldest published book on this list, this is Where the Chill Waits by T. Chris Martindale. And just like Carrick Glenn, this one also has just over 300 ratings. It has 379 ratings to be precise on Goodreads. So although it has more than some of the others on this list, it still deserves way more than just 300 ratings because it is a masterclass example of how to write an effective, slow burn, atmospheric book that's also very, very eerie, unsettling, has great sense of setting, and really, really well done horror. Essentially, it's about these men who go on a business trip to a very, very isolated place in Canada, and soon they start to come across very supernatural seeming things, and they also start to be physically affected by whatever they are experiencing. And I don't want to give away too much. It is fantastic. And if you can handle a slow burn, I highly recommend it. And honestly, I would say this is one of the best paperbacks from hell or best old school horror books I've ever read. That's how much I like this. So I have full confidence that even people who don't usually check out older books might also actually enjoy this one. And before I close out this video, I did want to give a shout out to my honorable mention, Cruel Nature. And the only reason this one isn't officially a part of the list is because it's a middle grade book, so it's not an adult horror book. However, I still wanted to shout it out here because if you like scary stories to tell in the dark and that type of vibe in your horror, especially when it comes to middle grade horror, I think you could really love this. It's just a little collection, a very short collection of short stories. However, the illustrations and the stories themselves are pretty dark and gruesome for kids. So I was pleasantly surprised. I love this, and I think more people should check it out, especially if you are a nostalgic fan of, like I said, scary stories to tell in the dark. This would totally be your jam. And it only has 9 ratings on Goodreads as of right now, which is the lowest on this entire list. So let's get the ratings up and check this out if it sounds interesting at all to you, because I truly was pleasantly surprised by it. And a special extra thank you to the author who did send me this copy for review. However, it really exceeded all my expectations, so I gotta say, I highly and thoroughly recommend it. If you're looking for more of my top favorites, I would check out my top 20 horror books of all time list that I just released about a year ago. So that could really pique your interest if you like top lists, because that's one of my favorite that I've ever done. I also have a top trashiest paperbacks from hell list. Where the Chill Waits would not be on that, by the way, but you might find a lot of other fun old school horror recs from that video that are more fun, less serious, but still enjoyable nonetheless. Did you guys read any of the books on my list? If so, I want to hear about it. Let me know down below what you thought. And if you want to leave a comment but you don't know what to say, you could always just leave a star or galactic type of emoji to signify how these books deserve more ratings, more stars on Goodreads. So please check some of these out if any of them sound interesting to you, because it's important to support horror authors whose work is actually good, whose work is underseen, because I feel like a lot of these authors of these books fit that criteria for sure. Alright, for this time though, that is it for me. Till next time, you know what you can do. Check out those videos I told you guys about, but also keep on killing it. Bye, guys.